of McNamara Capital.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. I'm just watching as all of our local news stations obsess about the gator grabber. And it literally was like a grab. I use lures bigger than that to fly fish.
Frank Robb.
What they used to catch that gator in that lagoon.
It was a 3-prong, like a heavier fly fish type of apparatus that dragged him. And now he's a hero. And guess what? Quinn McCarthy, our executive producer, or whatever he is, he's going to dress up as Frank Robb for Halloween. And his little son, he's going to dress up as a gator because that's about the size of the gator.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty good. I don't know if it's going to keep till Halloween, but in this hick town, probably will.
We're not a hick town. This is
You're obsessing about a baby gator in a lagoon. This is a week's worth of wall-to-wall coverage.
It's funny.
Press conference, BBM News takes live.
They did. They took a portion of it live. I thought something serious was happening.
Total hick
And then
town.
he gets to throw out the first pitch at Wrigley with a Cubs jersey with his name on back. And then this morning he's going to turn on Buckingham Fountain.
Yeah.
And then they're going to give him the key to the city.
Yeah, and then he can rejoin ZZ Top. Great. All right, very good.
And by the way, in case people want to know, you, young man, are wearing 2 different shoes this morning.
Apropos of nothing. Well, I'm wearing two of the same.
You're wearing.
It's the same brand of shoes, but I have one from a more updated pair and one from a previous pair. But it's the same shoe. It's the same brand of shoe.
It's the same brand of shoe, but one's old and ratty-tat-tatty, and the other one's new.
Yeah.
I'm going to tweet it out.
Same make and model.
I'm a hillbilly. What is wrong with you? You're as much hicky as this.
Well,
now.
I know. I'm a hillbilly. I live in a hick town. I'm a hillbilly, too.
Yeah. Come again now. Come on.
All right. On this show, we try to tackle more important issues than baby gators in lagoons or my shoe selections. Things like free speech. We talked about this case when it happened, the brutal assault of Andy Ngo, who's a journalist for Quillette.com in Portland. And this is Andy Ngo on Tucker a day or two after the event, after he had recovered. I mean, he was seriously beaten. Brain hemorrhage, beaten by Antifa on the streets of Portland. Here's Andy Ngo describing what happened.
On Saturday, documenting this protest that was organized by Antifa and its allies, we were a literal stone's throw away from Portland's most important institutions of the rule of law, the courthouses, the sheriff's office, the Central Police Precinct, while hearing people chant, "No hate, no fear," I'm suddenly bashed on the back of my head from behind. And from there, I'm a very passive person. I've never been in a fight. It took me a few seconds to realize that I was actually even hitting my head. When I realized what was happening, it was too late. A mob of people, all dressed in black and wearing masks, started beating me with their fists. And some of them used objects to hit me. I don't know how many people were involved. It seemed like 5, 10, 15, or 20. It could have been that many. They beat me so much that I lost control of my GoPro camera that I was holding, which was then stolen from me. And when I thought it was over, I was wrong. I put my arms up to try to shield my face, as well as to signal to them that I was surrendering and that I wasn't there to fight, but that really signaled to them to be more aggressive. So then they started dumping what I believe were milkshakes and eggs, throwing it at my face, which blinded me so I couldn't see. And I was kicked some more, punched some more. And all this time I kept thinking, where are the police? I could still see the Multnomah County Justice Center in front of me, but no police ever arrived. I eventually stumbled away, bleeding, across the park, and I lost my balance, so I sat down on the ground in front of the courthouse. And from there, a medic SWAT team informed me that in order to get an ambulance to be taken to a hospital, I would have to walk to the police precinct. In other words, walk back in the direction of the demonstrators who just attacked me. Later that night, after arriving in the emergency room, I had a CT scan, which confirmed that I was diagnosed with a brain hemorrhage.
And
Anybody arrested still for that? Because I've been checking.
I have not heard.
Boo.
The black masked thugs, leftist thugs that they are, the fascists who call themselves anti-fascists. Everything is redefined in modern day. And the key phrase in terms of what he said that tells you a lot about what you need to know about the Marxist left. He suggested that he surrendered, essentially. I'm not here to fight. And they found that provocative. They found him being peaceful, him surrendering, him not putting up a fight was provocative to beat him more. And so we talked in the 6 o'clock hour about Dennis Prager's testimony before Congress yesterday, before Senate subcommittee on big tech censoring conservative views, elimination of dissent. And Prager referenced Martin Niemöller's famous formulation about Nazi Germany when it came to the elimination of dissent that begot the elimination of dissenters. And so this is another example of the elimination of dissent. It can be done surreptitiously on social media by the big tech companies, and it can be done in the streets, too, by thugs who are given license by local politicians. For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by Gabriel Nadales, who is a former member of Antifa, and now, has he seen the light, regional field coordinator for the Leadership Institute. Gabriel, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Are you surprised by what you saw on the streets of Portland with Andy Ngo and the other violence that is being committed and promoted by Antifa?
It doesn't surprise me one bit. What we're seeing now, what happened to Andy Ngo, is just the latest of attacks by Antifa. And just recently, over the weekend, we had another attack where a member of Antifa went over and he tried bombing an ICE building in, I believe, in Spokane, Washington. And this is just getting worse and worse as the days go on. And the longer we don't take Antifa as a serious threat that they truly are, the worse it's going to get.
Well, why did you join Antifa, and then why did you leave?
So I joined Antifa when I was 16, almost 10 years ago. And the reason I joined was because I legitimately thought I was going to be able to make a difference. I mean, as you guys mentioned, Antifa, it sounds like you're anti-fascist. So you go there thinking you're going to fight fascists. The problem with Antifa, though, is that anybody that they disagree with is a fascist in their mind. And that could be a journalist who's just trying to report the truth like Andy. Or it could be somebody like an American who supports American values of liberty and freedom. That's a fascist to Antifa. And it's really problematic because innocent people are getting hurt.
So what were the ice cream socials like where you'd get together and talk about what you were planning and so on and so forth? I mean, what were the discussions like internally?
Well, that's one of the big points about Antifa, that it's not actually an organization. A lot of people think it's this overarching organization that talks to each other, but Antifa is made up of a bunch of small little groups that work independently from one another. Whenever there's a call to action via social media or flyers on the street, they're all kind of supposed to come together. And it can vary from workers' unions like the International Workers of the World or the local grocery store unions to more college-based groups like at UC Berkeley, for example, they had By Any Means Necessary, which is a group that started a few decades ago. And most recently, one of the things that they did in 2017, they created a riot which cost California taxpayers over $100,000.
Right.
Yeah,
So on that though, so there's no roll call, anti-organizational, monthly meetings. So it's just missives that are sent out to groups that are sympathetic, and then whatever member of SEIU wants to, get all dressed up in their battle gear, and whatever member of the International Socialist Workers Group wants to get dressed up. It's just enough drawn from enough fellow travelers that you get a mob to organize.
Exactly. That's a very good way to put it. There are certain groups that are well established in a community that are organizing these protests. For example, in Portland, they have a group called Rose City Antifa, and they are really dangerous. But as a whole, it tends to be anybody who thinks that they want to be part of it at the moment. They don't really have meetings or anything like that, which is exactly why they're so dangerous. I said this a couple of times before, that I'm pretty certain that not everyone who attacked Andy knew who he was. Probably the first couple of people knew who he was, and then after they just kept piling on, attacking somebody, they had no clue who he was.
And what happens after something like that, whether that's the riot at Berkeley to stop a speaker on campus they don't want to speak, or it's beating up a journalist? Then what happens? I mean, you have people say, well, what the hell are we doing? Why were you guys beating up that kid or whatever?
Well, from some of the experience I had, one of the first things that we would do once after a protest or anything we were involved in, we would go home and try to figure out if there was any news articles about it, see if there was actually any sympathetic things on our side. There were some other groups that went beyond that. I remember one of the first protests I went to, they were taking pictures of the cars of the counter-protesters or the protesters we were protesting, taking pictures because you're going to be using this information to dox them. And so, I mean, it doesn't just stop there. You mentioned that it's about silence and dissent, or like that Andy was trying to surrender and they didn't give him that. Antifa doesn't just want surrender. They want complete destruction and annihilation of anyone who they disagree with.
I mean, are they even surprised, or you, about how much power police give them? I mean, Dan keeps telling the story about one time Antifa was directing traffic in the middle, was it Seattle or Portland?
In Portland.
Yeah. I mean, why do they have so much power?
It's really interesting, and it's a complete difference of the when I used to be in it, which is back in 2010 and 11. Back then, they were separating us. They would kind of be like, there would be a police line separating the different groups. And I've been seeing this as a regional field coordinator for the Leadership Institute. Just every time I go, when there's Antifa, they just let them mix among each other, and it's dangerous. And I think it's in part because there's a lot of college administrators and politicians who are spineless, and they refuse to hold Antifa accountable because it's benefiting the leftist cause, the liberal cause.
And what do we know about who is behind Antifa in terms of funding them, or who's actually trying to provide advice and counsel, direct them in any way? Here's somebody you should talk to help organize your mob, so on and so forth.
So here's the interesting thing about the difference when I used to be in it and now. I feel like it's far more organized now. At the time when I was in it, again, a long time ago, it was just more of a call to action. So a lot of the things we were paying out of pocket, whatever we needed to buy, we just kind of took it. However, I've been noticing that there's a lot of organizations that are actually legal groups to defend people who are prosecuted for the criminal offenses. And there's even professors who will encourage people to donate to these organizations.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, because I read in your article, which is fascinating, that professors are in on this. And did one in particular encourage you?
No, actually, I joined Antifa before I was even in college.
Oh, that's right.
I was in high school when all this happened. And
you have
at the time,
but you have that book. You have the Antifa guide from Bray, that Yale professor,
Dartmouth.
right?
He's from Dartmouth.
Dartmouth, yeah, Dartmouth.
He published it in 2016, and it's called Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook, and it basically encourages violence. It talks about how Antifa should be fighting anyone they disagree with, and the worst part is that a significant portion of the book that everybody who buys it is donated to a legal fund to help Antifa get away with what they're doing.
That's remarkable. Well, maybe the good professor is a place to start too, and holding him to account for his role in underwriting. So. I mean, you've had people call for Attorney General Barr to get involved and treat Antifa like a domestic terrorist organization. Do you agree with that sort of federal law enforcement involvement?
I honestly think it's unnecessary, because I think we have the laws on the books already to prosecute them. What I think we need to start going is after politicians who refuse to hold people accountable. I'm actually very happy from a story at UT Austin. At the Leadership Institute's campus reform, we reported a story about an Antifa-affiliated group that threatened to dox students who wanted to be part of Turning Point USA or Young Conservative of Texas. Well, at first they weren't doing anything, but after the media coverage that they got, the administration decided, you know what, I think we need to defend our students. So they contacted the Attorney General, I believe the Attorney General for Texas, and they were asking of what they can do for legal remedies. I think we have the laws necessary to hold Antifa accountable and to hold professors accountable, but we have to put pressure on people to actually enforce those laws.
Political will problem, as it often is, yes. Gabriel Nadales, Regional Field Coordinator for the Leadership Institute and former Antifa member. Thanks so much for joining us and providing your insights on that thuggish organization. Appreciate it, Gabriel.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You've made the switch, and it feels so good. You've switched to Chicago's Morning Answer